Suciotalk. All right, so Suciotalk here, hanging out in the studio. What's up, everyone? Hanging out with Eleana Hsu.
Yep.
Saying that correct?
Yep.
All right. Shared cultures in the house.
Yes. Yes.
What is up?
Not much. Just been really busy.
Just been spreading misos all over the bay.
Miso and shoyu, baby.
I love that. Love that. Has life become just a little bit more funky with all that stuff in your house and your car?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes when we're doing deliveries,
Yeah.
little spills happen because they're active ferments.
Yeah.
So I think our car kind of permanently smells like umami and wild mushrooms, depending on, you know, if we're going camping or whatever. But it's either wild mushrooms or umami. So we kind of dubbed our car the Mushroom Mobile.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. There you go. And is this a passion that you had since you were a kid, or just sort of as you came into eating food and enjoying?
No. It actually came from, I like to say they found us, actually, the mushrooms. So prior to Shared Cultures, or even 3 years ago, we had no idea how, you know, what a wild mushroom was, or what a fungus or like fermentation really was. I mean, I think we ate fermented foods, but we never questioned how those things were made. So we actually kind of fell into it was even before I met my partner, Kevin. I was working at a desk job, and I was pretty depressed at my desk job. And I would go for runs before and after work to kind of clear my head. And I knew that running, you know, the serotonin and all that stuff. And on one of those kind of mornings, found a patch, or I like to say the chanterelles found me, because there were just this bright patch of yellow mushrooms out in Woodside. And I brought them home, went to the library after work, researched them, found out they were edible chanterelles. And I remember seeing chanterelles at the Whole Foods a while ago in downtown Palo Alto and thinking, wow, those are like $40 a pound. And I decided to, you know, after researching, I ate them, and I was kind of hooked, because I was like, wow, this is delicious. I found it in the woods. Let's go find more stuff in the woods. So that's kind of how the journey kind of started with mushroom foraging. But after that, it was kind of this excess. You start finding more things in the forest. Bay nuts. You start noticing, you know, the miner's lettuce, the nasturtiums. And you start thinking to yourself, well, how do I preserve all this stuff? Because there's so much of it. And so fermentation kind of fell into that, you know, through researching how to preserve foods. And that's kind of how the whole koji chapter started, because you start reading about koji and you're like, wow, that's a fungus. I love mushrooms now. They're changing my life. You know, at that point I was no longer depressed, and kind of decided to start doing some home experiments, because, you know, I was like so passionate about mushrooms, so passionate about foraging. And here was this thing that was in, you know, the connector of what was going to be this, you know, it was a fungus and a way to preserve foods. And I was looking for something to preserve all the mushrooms I was finding. And it seemed like this missing link. So, you know, soon after the home projects kind of kept coming, and Kevin kind of got involved with helping with a lot of that. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. What desk job?
I was working at CBRE, which was a commercial corporate real estate.
They pretty much own all of the Bay Area. I mean, every time you see a building is CBRE.
So they're a brokerage firm. So they CBRE represents buyers, and we represent sellers of all commercial buildings, whether it's a, you know, industrial building or retail space or an office building. Apartments that are 20 units or more, also considered commercial. So, you know, we kind of broker deals. And so it's kind of like a real estate agent, but for a, you know, a commercial property. So I was working for them for maybe 4 or 5 years. And kind of towards the end of that chapter, I was just kind of getting a little depressed, because quite honestly, you see, you know, people, kind of interns or people that were friends of friends' sons, you know, and they were kind of getting promotions. And it's like, well, I've been doing this job for 5 years. Like, why am I not getting promoted? And at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's a white man's world, but it really is about connections with like all industries. And if you don't have friends that are wealthy, that have connections to, people who are owning buildings, who
Yeah.
are wanting to sell. It's relationship based, right? And I didn't really know those people. And in order to know those people, a lot of people would go to like golf events or, events that connected
you.
those types,
So you had to be wanting to be known and a
Totally.
thing within that industry.
Yeah. And that was kind of not my thing. It was like after work, of course, colleagues and stuff, they would invite us to like bars or, hey, there's a golf tournament coming up this weekend.
You like golf?
No,
Oh,
so I was
like,
kind of
"Fuck
like,
golf,
I was
bro."
like, no. So, I mean, I think it was good though. I mean, in retrospect, I think everything in life happens for a reason, like you're hustling a lot and you're doing all these things and then you get depressed and then you kind of reflect and you're like, why
Am I doing the thing?
why am I doing? Yeah, like this isn't making me happy, right? So I kind of think that the whole mushroom, the whole fungus thing kind of found me. Like I wasn't really, I was just trying to do my best, trying to cure my depression. And then all of a sudden life kind of showed me this path and I was like, all right, let's do
And
it.
you just did it.
Yeah.
When did you leave your desk job? Then?
So I actually left my desk job January, right before the pandemic happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're like, we're going for this.
I'm going for
baby.
this, yeah.
And then pandemic comes.
Yeah.
So do you shit your pants immediately after? Or what did you
I kind of did. So what happened was at that point in January where, when I quit my job, I was at that point kind of confident enough to be like, okay, I can ferment a few basic things like shio koji and, amazake or make koji rice. And maybe I can sell to restaurants first because I had a feeling or I knew that a lot of people, like a lot of my forager friends, they would sell things to restaurants, like whether it's morel mushrooms or perfectly, picked nasturtiums or whatever.
Right.
So I figured, okay, restaurants are buying these and, people are coming in and restaurants are buying the stuff. So why can't I knock on doors and try to sell some shiokoji or some sort of quick ferments and see how it goes? And that was the plan. And then the pandemic happened and all the restaurants shut down. And I was thinking, oh crap, like I'm in trouble. But you kind of start at that point. I was posting all these things on Instagram and people started just DMing us and being like, hey, like I see you made a mushroom miso or I see you're fermenting the shoyu. Like, are you selling that? Like, and we kind of weren't because we were like, well, this is just stuff we're making at home.
Yeah.
Like, and we were just kind of, in the beginning, we were doing trades because we didn't really feel comfortable taking money from people.
Imposter.
Yeah.
syndrome, huh?
Yeah. Because you're like, okay,
I get it.
But then after a while, the DMs kind of started getting a little bit more consistent and Kevin and I were like, okay, well, maybe we should create an Excel spreadsheet, because before I would just like type in like, okay, we have this for sale, for sale, whatever, and then it got a little out of hand. So we're like, all right, let's create an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, lucky you, because not much cooks can be like, I'm just going to make an Excel spreadsheet. You know what I'm saying? So it's good that you had that 9-to-5 job to help you out.
Yeah, totally.
No?
And a lot of that has to do with Kevin too. So
Yeah.
he has a finance background. And
Yeah, let's talk about Kevin real quick,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so we don't say his name and it's like, he never said who I was. Kevin Gondo, co-founder
Yes.
with you,
Yes.
partner in life,
Yes.
partner in crime,
Yes.
amazing human being,
Yes.
very beautiful man.
Thank you. I think
Love
so
his
too.
mustache. Can't wait to see him in person
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
It's
for
been a
sure,
while, but
for sure.
shout out to Kevin.
Yeah, he's been amazing. I mean, we kind of just started doing this together.
Yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, we weren't really expecting in the beginning. I think it was just me with the I was the one who was like, okay, I really want to quit my job. I want to do this. But when the pandemic happened, we're looking at each other like, all right, well, let's do this together, you know? And it worked out because I like to say he's kind of back of house and I'm more front of house,
Right.
And it works because our personalities are very different, but we share the same foundation and we have similar goals. And we're always trying to problem solve at different angles to get to a solution that makes sense.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, here on Sucio Talk, we take it all the way back.
Yeah.
So where were you born?
I was born in San Francisco.
Born in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay. Raised there as well?
Yes.
I'm guessing?
Born
Okay.
and raised in San Francisco. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How do you see it? How do you see San Francisco today from when it was when you grew up?
It's different. It's different. I don't want to say it's different in a bad way. But there are, pros and cons of the gentrification that's kind of come along.
Right.
I remember growing up, I wasn't allowed to kind of skate or, go past a certain street on my block, because there are prostitutes and I mean, there were drug deals going down. And I remember one time my uncle even got shot like in my neighborhood growing up, like, taking the bus back home.
Okay.
And so, there are a lot of instances like that. And I remember my dad also one time he got, he got stabbed. So there's a lot of things growing up in San Francisco that weren't so great. It was really a working class kind of.
How old were you when your dad got stabbed?
I think he was 6. Yeah, he was dropping me off from school. He dropped me off at school, and then he would take a bus to work.
Okay.
And there's somebody just pulled a knife out, and he still has a scar on his arm.
They're trying to rob him, or?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But those were things that you kind of dealt with growing up in the city. And I remember in high school, somebody asked me for my wallet, and I just threw it. I was like, take my wallet. I didn't want to like get stabbed. I just learned like, hey, these people want your money. Like,
yeah, just give it to them.
Just give it to them. So I just chucked the wallet as far as possible, and they ran after it, and I was like, thank God. But growing up, it was just that type of.
That's a good trick.
It is
Getting
a good
robbed,
trick.
throw your wallet.
Just throw your wallet. Just throw it.
Right.
But growing up, I mean, that was kind of San Francisco was kind of rough and tough, and I mean, even now when I'm walking through like certain parts of the neighborhood, you just walk fast. Don't look at anybody, don't make eye contact. But that was
a very New York mentality. You don't really think it unless you're from there.
No, I mean, growing up, my mom would like point out the needles to me, be like, don't step on that. Or even on BART now, I'm totally cognizant, don't sit on BART, check the BART seats for needles, because there are a lot of drug users on BART, and if you're sitting on the seat where they're using and then you sit on the needle, right?
Hepatitis B.
Right? So it's all these things that I think I grew up kind of noticing or being accustomed to, but now the city is so different because of all of the tech money that's come in. So, I mean, yes, it's good because I use the public libraries. I remember Dolores Park growing up, not a safe place to be, right? But now Dolores Park
Everybody's just tripping on mushrooms.
It's like happy place.
It really is
cool, and no problems. But growing up, Dolores Park, nobody went there. It wasn't nice.
There wasn't any of those restaurants around there.
No, and so a lot of the city has changed. So a lot of it, I think, has changed for the better. But at the same time, it prices people out, right? So that's the thing that I think, Kev and I are also experiencing as business owners. We live in San Francisco. We want to stay in San Francisco, but we can't afford San Francisco rent, to manufacture food, right? And we're getting priced out really from, like either marijuana companies that are trying to make edibles, their food production company that want to, produce edibles in San Francisco with the San Francisco branding, like made in San Francisco.
Right.
Or you're getting priced out by other warehouses like Amazon that are taking up space, right? So it makes sense, but you just kind of have to figure it out, I guess, take the pros and then take the cons too. So
would you ever do a miso cannabis edible?
No, but we did do a collab with Sue Weed recently. Monica Lowe, she is an Asian American who wrote a book about how to make your own weed like gummies and stuff.
Right.
We did a collab with her with her corn miso. So she has, we did a giveaway when she made like these corn miso like caramels, and so that was really cool.
That's cool.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. There you go. Shared cultures. Open-minded business over
really
here.
Cool. It was really cool. Yeah.
If you had to move out of San Francisco, where would you move to?
Probably West Oakland. West Oakland seems like a really cool space. There's that really cool corner where Magnolia Mini Bar used to be, where Den Sake is right now, Sobeichi. That kind of seems like a cool kind of place for us. But I think San Francisco for us is home, and I think a lot of it too with fermentation, we're really passionate about like sharing how to make this stuff and teaching people. Especially, we get a lot of chefs that ask us like, how do you do this and how do you do that? And it would just be cool to have a space where we can all share those ferments and have like a knowledge community center.
Yeah.
And that's something that we are hoping to kind of incubate in the next chapter of our business. I mean, right now we invite people, whoever, who's interested in this stuff, to come by to our space to check it out. But it's a really small shared commercial kitchen space, and we share it with like 7 other makers. So it's really tight in there.
Challenging, yeah.
It's really tight. I mean, all of our stuff right now is just, all the equipment is like filled to the ceiling. Mm-hmm. We can't put any more commercial refrigerators in there. I mean, we own 2 units that we just got this year, and it's packed. Everything is packed. Mm-hmm. And we just recently got a storage space that we're paying for now. And, that houses all our jars and packing materials and things like that, because we ship all over. Mm-hmm. But it's getting pretty packed right now.
Right.
So
where's the farthest place that you ship to?
You have shipped to wherever USPS goes. So we've done Hawaii, we've done Alaska, we've done Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico,
yeah,
okay.
So that's cool.
How are they looking at this?
I mean, just
Instagram,
baby. Okay. Yeah, Instagram.
Love it. Crazy. Hey, whatever.
Yeah, I know, it's cool.
That's cool. Hell yeah. Okay, so born and raised here. What made you? What was your first job?
My first job was across the street at a grocery store called Fruit Barn. It's closed now, but I've known the owner since I was born. Mm-hmm. And he's seen me grow up. And I think when I was like 12 or 13, I was probably 13 at that time, and I was kind of bored. And he asked me if I wanted to cashier for him. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I never had a job before. And he was like, well, I know you. Like, you're fine.
Yeah.
I'll teach you. So I remember he paid me cash. And I would work, minimum wage, and it was so much fun, because I was like, even at 13 minimum wage, I can't remember what it was, but it was so much money to me back then.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was amazing, and literally because it was across the street, and my parents felt good about it because they knew him personally. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like a community taking care of each other sort of vibe. So that was my first job. Mm-hmm. But my first real job, when I was like on payroll and everything like that, was at a Jamba Juice, and it was the Jamba Juice at Union Square at the Macy's.
You worked at Jamba Juice, so you got slammed all day, though.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The Macy's?
It was, I don't want to say it was
like
horrible.
Crying kids in the line.
It was bad. But it was good, because that's at a sense that kind of like taught me how to work really hard, because the line was constant at Jamba Juice.
I bet, yeah.
And nobody tips at Jamba Juice.
Right.
Nobody tips, right? Everybody's at the mall.
Are you cashier? Or are you juicing?
They would rotate you.
Right.
So like
Is juicing really hard? Is it tough?
No, I thought juicing I hated being cashier, to be honest with you, because it's just constant talking the entire time, and mm-hmm. there's no breaks, right? And nobody cares about you. They just they just want their smoothie, and they want it exactly how they want it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and if you fuck it up, you ruin their day.
They're upset. And then they want another one, and then your manager's like, why'd you mess that up,
Yeah.
So I just remember working, long hours at the Jamba Juice, and I don't want to say I hated it. I thought it was fine, but I just was like thinking to myself, like, damn, is this how all service jobs are?
Yeah. It made you question.
It made me,
yeah. It must have been a hard job.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long did you work there?
Probably like 2 years. I think I worked there junior and senior year when I was in high school. Yeah.
Did you have any aspirations in high school, like what you wanted to do? Did you know any career paths that you want to take?
No, I think at that point, because I'm first generation Asian American, so my parents came from China with literally $200 in their pocket, and so there are a lot of expectations. The typical stereotypical.
Don't fuck this up.
Yeah, they're like, lawyer, doctor, pharmacist. If you can't be a doctor, those were the only 3 options, and even lawyer wasn't really. It was really just doctor and pharmacist.
Yeah.
That were kind of like drilled into me from an early age. I remember my first toy growing up was actually like a book about the human skeleton, and you could it was a puzzle that you can put the bones together. And that was my first toy growing up, and I was like, damn, I just want some Legos. Give me some Legos.
I want to be creative.
Yeah, but not really, it was just kind of like going through the motions of high school and just figuring it out.
Right.
So, yeah.
So when it's time to go, did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to U of A in Tucson, Arizona.
Why'd you choose Tucson?
So Actually, because Tucson has a really great pharmacist school, so I got accepted there. And at the U of A, they have this program where you don't, after you graduate college, you basically can go straight to the pharmacy school. And the pharmacy school, I think, at most other schools, it's another 3 years or something like that.
Right.
But with U of A, they kind of like combine your undergraduate with the pharmacy school, so you can get out. Basically, it's a 6-year training program versus like a 7 or 8, so my parents thought that was a really good idea. Plus, UC tuition, even if I wanted to go to UC school, living costs in California were way more than living costs in Arizona, even with out-of-state tuition. So we kind of figured like, okay, we're saving 2 years with the whole pharmacy program, and then on top of that, your living expenses are going to be so much cheaper. And I was expected to pay for some of college, so it kind of just made sense financially for me to go out of state.
Right.
And I was kind of excited because I was like, wow, this is the first time in my life that I'm going somewhere where I don't know anybody. And that was really exciting for me, just because I wanted to kind of get out there and see what else, like, discover something new.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you got out there, and how was that college experience?
It was crazy. U of A is definitely a party school,
Okay.
which you hear about. Or
So you
read
learned
about.
how to party. There you go.
Well, maybe the first year or so, but then I actually, it was funny because I was on academic probation the second semester.
Right. What is academic probation?
It was just, you're just not getting good grades.
Oh,
and
God.
it's because you're a freshman, you're trying to like socialize,
Yeah.
but then you're also taking like chemistry and math and all this
Yeah.
stuff because I'm in the pharmacy
get
school and I just wasn't performing that well. And to be quite honest with you, I actually am horrible at math and horrible at science, and I only really did it because my parents pushed me in that direction. I think a lot of Asian Americans kind of feel that sometimes, like
Yes.
that pressure of, or not even Asian Americans, just immigrants, like coming from an immigrant family.
Yeah.
You got to just like perform.
Are they hard to please? Even to this day?
They're okay now. They're okay
Right.
now. They know I'm happy. So I think that's
Yeah.
what's important.
When you left your last job and transitioned into
Oh.
doing them cultures, were they like, what the fuck?
It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was like, I'm going to give you 6 months. And if you,
Bro.
and if,
Show me the piano
and
in
if
6
if
months.
this does not work out, you're going back to your desk job, you
Yeah.
know? And I kind of just ignored her. I was like, all right, sorry, mom, but
Whatever. Yeah.
it's cool. Like I'm going to figure it out. But I had some faith, I was like, I really think that if you're doing something you're really passionate about, people see that, and it's like, it feels like, it just feels good. Like you're working really hard, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel like work because you're pursuing something that has meaning to you, right? So, but my mom definitely had a freak out when when I told her,
When
like,
you told her?
I'm going to quit my job.
Yeah.
Like,
But did you put that off a little bit, telling her? Was it difficult? Or are you just like easy to communicate the bad news?
I kind of just told her, like, I had been planting seeds little by little, like, I'm not happy at work.
Yeah. You're like, someday I might quit my job.
I'm not
Start
happy at
telling me
work.
so.
But we were also fermenting together at
Yeah.
home. So
Okay,
that was
okay.
really fun, right? Because we're making soy sauce and we're making all these ferments at home together. And my mom was a huge part of that. She loves fermenting and doing things like that. So she thought that was cool, and that I at least had on my side. But
Right.
then when I told her I wanted to turn to a business, she was like, are you crazy? Like, this
Yeah.
is just the hobby. Like, this is what we do after work. But then, I really felt like, hey, like, I really want to try this. So she was like, all right, I'll let you do it. And then we'll see how it goes. And, so far I think it's been going pretty. I think she sees how much work we're doing and how many jars we're moving, and she feels confident. She hasn't told me like, hey, let's stop. So
Right. Okay. Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good validation right there.
Yeah, for sure.
What was your first job out of college?
So actually my first job, I was actually working in college because I knew I had to pay off my college loans.
Yeah.
So I took a semester off when I was a sophomore in college, and I actually got a paralegal certificate because at that point I had decided that pharmacy school was not for me, and
What made you decide that?
I just couldn't pass organic chemistry. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, my brain does not work like
tough.
that. I just didn't understand. And that was actually the big heartbreak for my mom, because I told her that I couldn't do organic chemistry. And my parents actually disowned me for like a semester. They
Really?
were like, yeah, they were like, we're not paying for school. Like, you figure it out.
They're like, you mean to tell me that you're dumb?
Yeah.
I can't.
They were like, you went to U of A to do this. You must finish this, you know? And I was just like, what, Mom, like I'm not, and at that point I wasn't going home for Christmas because, or winter break, because I was retaking classes. I was retaking math and like chemistry classes. So my parents knew that I was on the struggle boat. Like I was trying really hard. Like, I'm not going to lie. Maybe that first semester I partied a little bit, but you know, second semester when you get on academic probation, you're like, okay, I got to get this together. Like, this is serious.
That must have been a fucking serious first semester partying.
It was
to get on probation the second. Damn.
Oh my gosh. But you know, and then I told my parents, like, hey, I can't do this. Like, I tried really hard.
Yeah.
I cannot do this anymore. Like, it's not in the cards for me, you know? And so I decided that at that point, okay, what's the second best thing that's going to please my parents? It's like, okay, let's be a lawyer. So that was, you know, so then I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a paralegal in order to right my wrongs for not being a pharmacist. I was like, I'm going to be a paralegal, and that's going to pay for school, because right now I'm disowned at this very moment. Like, I can't pay for school. So I'm going to be a paralegal. And paralegals, I was, you know, on Google, they make pretty decent money.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a paralegal, and I'm going to pay for school, and I'm going to be a lawyer, and my parents will accept me after that.
Right.
So that was kind of what I was thinking.
That's a long game. You're like, all right, disowned right now. Let's 5-year plan.
Yeah. But, you know, it ended up working out. So I was a paralegal from when I was a sophomore to senior year. So I was able to pay off, at that point, you know, I was actually able to pay off most of my college fees from that, working part-time. And, you know, with college, it's great because you can pick your own schedule, right? So I would like go into work, and then I would go to class, or sometimes I would go into class first and then go into work. And it made a lot of sense. And I was really lucky to have that job. And I continued having that job until like 2 years after college, where at that point I was studying for the LSAT. And I'm actually a really bad test taker. I can't stay awake during tests. So I fall asleep. So I took the LSAT maybe 3 times, and I just could not, for the life of me, concentrate for that long without a break. And I was just not hitting the scores I needed to get into like a great law school that made sense. And at that point, I had another kind of like, oh God, I'm not going to be a lawyer. Like, my parents are going to really kill me now.
This time.
This sucks.
It's over now.
I'm screwed. But I remember having a lot of those moments where it's like, oh God, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I remember telling my parents, like, hey, can't be a lawyer, can't pass the LSAT. I tried 3 times.
Yeah.
I don't
fucking tried.
I tried.
And at the end of the day, I think you're also strong for being able to call it.
Yeah.
Being like, you know what, this is not, because some people won't accept that shit. And they just fail and keep failing.
No,
like,
I mean, it's kind of like, well, when life is, that's the thing, right? Because I was studying all the time for the LSAT. I mean, I didn't have a social life. I was studying all the time, and I was really serious about this thing. And I wanted to be a lawyer because I really liked my job as a paralegal. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And that was a smart thing to do, because a lot of people say they want to be a lawyer, but I think the best thing is to be a paralegal first, work in a law firm, see if you like it, and then try to be a lawyer. Go be a lawyer.
So you can be a paralegal without much. What are you doing as a paralegal?
You're basically like, so lawyers, it's all paperwork. So you're basically going through all that paperwork first for an attorney. That's what I used to do.
Right.
And then I would like go through all the paperwork and index it for them, or condense, summarize things for them, like section 1, this is what's happening, section 1.
Right.
Section 2, this is what's happening.
What were the documents about? Like different cases?
So I worked for the Mexican Capital Legal Assistance Program.
Okay.
So my boss was actually the country of Mexico, and which is really cool. We were actually employed. Our firm was employed by the country of Mexico to defend Mexican defendants who crossed the border and committed capital offenses. And so we're basically representing a lot of drug lords.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it was really crazy
that
work.
Mexico is like funding that?
Well, they don't believe in the death penalty. So, and neither do I. So I found the work to be really meaningful.
Mexico doesn't believe in the death penalty, so they're willing to fight for their people to get sovereignty or whatever?
I'm not sure if Mexico as a whole doesn't believe in, but this one organization did not believe in the death penalty. So
those were the cases that they were grabbing when it could be a possibility that the person was going to,
Yes. So then because they were in the United States at that point, we would represent them. And so we got funded by this legal assistance program through Mexico. And so a lot of it was going through what they would call disclosures. So it was just all paperwork, whether CDs from the police, crime scene evidence, there's so much paperwork involved. And so, if you're a lead attorney on that case, you have so many cases. You might have like 30, 40 cases. It's hard for you to cipher through all that information. So typically the paralegals would step in and help kind of organize all that for you.
How many paralegals does a lawyer have?
Depends. I think most of the time there's like one or two for the whole firm, but you're working on cases.
For the whole firm?
Our firm was about 6 attorneys in our office, and then we had a national kind of organization of other attorneys that were working. Like if somebody got arrested in Texas, I was in Arizona, so we had like Texas lawyers, and so those lawyers might have their own paralegal, but because I was working for this one attorney that was working for this program, I was his paralegal. So that's just kind of, it was just a lot of paperwork and indexing and organizing is really what it is, even with like email correspondence.
It's satisfying.
It was not, I think it was satisfying in the fact that I felt like I was doing a good thing, like a lot of these people came from circumstances where they had no choice, you read about their backgrounds, and they were basically, their parents were either in the drug business, they were taking drugs at a very young age, where their minds, and that's all they knew, it's not their fault, obviously I'm not saying what they did was right, but it's not their fault that they kind of grew up in this environment and that's all they knew. And so they go commit these crimes at young ages or whatever, and and so I kind of felt like, okay, this work had some meaning to it. And I did enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it was like the next step was to be a lawyer. But I just could not.
Is there lifelong paralegals?
There are a lot of people that do paralegal work for a very long time. Yeah. So, I've only done criminal defense paralegal work. But even before working for him, I worked for another attorney, and he did a lot of like child sexual kind of molestation cases, but he was a criminal defense attorney. And something that I found that was really interesting was sometimes, a lot of the time, the mothers will kind of coach their children to kind of not lie, but they plant seeds in their heads, and it's like, oh, did daddy touch you, sort of thing, and then the man gets in trouble, and everyone believes the mom because she wants full parental rights to the child. And all these cases are so difficult, but that kind of helped me see that this whole line of criminal defense work, sometimes people are not criminals and they get wrongly placed in a box, and so I kind of came into that like not really knowing anything about that side of the world, and then being able to kind of sit back and be like, wow, there's a whole side to that. That was really eye-opening, I think, to me, because I never thought that people would lie about that stuff. But, the people I worked for were amazing people who I felt had a lot of integrity. And they usually won cases, and I think they won it because they had evidence to back things up. And so I kind of learned doing work for them, like how that whole system worked, and it felt kind of good to be able to see a dad be able to have rights to his child, and be a part of that family when he won, the case. So
that is insane.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean,
people lying about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, I did that for, I think I did that for about 6-7 years.
Yeah, because
I did that when I was a sophomore until 2 years after college. Maybe 5 or 6 years.
Was any of it traumatizing? Like the subject matter of the cases?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember I would eat lunch and be looking at like gory stuff,
Right.
But I mean, it was just kind of
While you're eating lunch,
yeah.
Chef? Come on.
It's just kind of like
Just at the Starbucks, like, oh, hey, what do you think?
I had work to do.
Yeah.
I was like I was either like getting to work like from school, and
Yeah.
I knew I had to finish my work so I can go home and do schoolwork. You know what I mean? So I didn't really have time to take a lunch. That was kind of
Yeah.
like I don't have time for a lunch.
Fucking
so
badass.
I have to get all this stuff done. And I remember just eating at my desk and like going through police photography and be like, okay, noted, this is file 1, these are the photos, file
Right.
2, these are the photos.
You had to like describe the photo so he
Yeah.
doesn't have to look at them, basically.
Totally. That's exactly what I did. That's what I did.
Okay. Crazy. All
yeah.
right. So till 2 years till after till after college.
Yeah.
When did you finally was like?
Well, when I couldn't pass the LSAT after I tried super hard, I've always tried super hard. So I knew that, telling my parents, going back to the drawing board and being like, look, I can't do this, but I tried super hard.
Yeah.
I knew in my heart of hearts that I did my best. And so at that point I was kind of lost. And I remember, I went for a run actually, and running always kind of seems to clear my head. And I remember writing down all the things on my iPhone about all the things I was passionate in life after a good run. And I remember actually sitting, I actually remember exactly where it was in Tucson on that park bench, sitting down and writing all the things I was passionate about. And I remember writing, at that point, it was like architecture, buildings, community. I loved all those things, and I've always appreciated those aspects. So then I remember typing it into Google, and like real estate development came up, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, let me try that. Like these are all the things, architecture, design, buildings, creating communities within space. I'm going to do that. So I enrolled in a real estate, like a master's of real estate program at the U of A, because, I had already finished my undergrad, and the master's program was like really the only concentrated kind of niche subject that they had, like on coaching you how to do this stuff. So I enrolled in that, and it was a 2-year program. And then I graduated, and I was like, all right, I'm going to work for some real estate companies now.
Yeah.
And I did that for maybe 5 or 6 years. Yeah. Like maybe 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And,
So
yeah.
I've always heard people being in real estate and all that. What the fuck actually is it? Because obviously, yeah, it's buying and selling properties, but what are the intricacies of it that you need an agent to do the things?
Yeah. So I studied real estate development. So that the schoolwork that had to do with that was basically like securing a plot of land and figuring out what the construction costs are, right? What permits you need to get. Sometimes buildings are built, like, let's say if you have a building in San Francisco and a developer wants to come in and build something, it's going to cost them a lot of money. And they want like a tax incentive, or they want to get some sort of like tax relief from the city. So then they'll build like a little community space or something,
right.
For the city. And then the city will then give them a big tax cut,
Right.
right? So I learned a lot about that part of it for real estate development. But when you graduate, what ends up happening is development firms are normally, they're either like really big leagues where you have to have a lot of experience, or, they're really like people who are pretty wealthy that have acquired a piece of land and want to build.
Right.
So there's kind of like the two parts to it. And, when I graduated, I wanted to move back to San Francisco because my dad was pretty sick at that time, and I'm an only child, so I wanted to move back. And to work in San Francisco as a real estate developer, you need a lot of experience,
right?
Because San Francisco is no joke, right? Like they're building $1 million buildings. They're not going to hire somebody that has zero life experience, but has trained in school for it. So at that point, I decided, I had already been working at CBRE for a while I was doing the Masters of Real Estate program. And CBRE is basically like the brokerage firm where it's just like, how a residential broker would be they represent sellers and buyers of houses, or not houses, of commercial properties. And I basically worked on market reports. So I would type up what's happening up in the market, how things were going, whether, was it good, was it bad. It was basically a newsletter that was sent out quarterly to all of their clients. And that kind of helped those clients decide whether or not they wanted to invest in certain deals, depending on how the market was going. And, there are all these newsletters were backed up by stats that I would collect, like cold call people and be like, all right, what's the asking rate? How long has this been on the market? And I would have to do that research all the time because the numbers were always changing. And then at the end of each quarter, I would finalize the numbers and then write a report about that. So, I was doing that while I was in school. And then when I graduated, I actually just decided to stay with the company and transfer to a Palo Alto office because it's a big company and they had the same job in Palo Alto. So I figured I would do that first for a little bit before, maybe trying to find a development job or do something else. So I just knew I needed to move back to the Bay Area. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned depression.
Yeah.
Is that something that hit you because you were working so much? Was Kevin around at this point?
I don't know if I met Kevin at that point. I think I definitely did not meet Kevin at this point of my life. I was working in Palo Alto and I was just feeling really depressed. I think because it wasn't that I was working a lot. It was just I felt like I was not getting the promotions that I wanted to get. Oh,
right. Yeah, we talked about that.
That's and a lot of it too was, you would get like a young intern that just graduated college and he was usually like he knew somebody in the company that got him the job. And then, he would work a year and then you see him get promoted before you and you're just sitting there like,
what the fuck?
What's happening?
Yeah, and you're like,
am I not doing a good job?
And you're like, John's a fucking idiot. Why is he getting?
I just didn't understand because I was like, look, I paid my dues. Isn't that how like corporate ladder climbing works? Like you pay your dues, you start at the bottom, you work really hard. You talk to your supervisors and you're like, look, I'm interested in growth. How can I grow within this company? And I did all the steps and things were just not happening, And at that point I was just kind of, and also I was living in Palo Alto, which I don't want to say that contributed to the depression, but I didn't have my people there. Like I felt really.
Palo Alto seems like a fake place.
It was very, I don't want to say it was a fake place, but it just felt like I wasn't with my people, like I would talk about things I would do, like on my weekends, like, like even normal things like, like hiking and like, or whatever. and some people were like, oh, okay. I'm like, what do you do on the weekends? And everybody was super into golf, football, things like I might be getting a new car this week. It was like very materialistic,
right.
And I just didn't, and it's no like judgment on that. I mean, everybody can find joy in whatever they want. I don't care, but I just didn't feel like when I was at work that I felt like those people truly like had common interests as me, like, shopping local or, I would go to the farmer's market and stuff and they all got their grocery stores. They're always trying to get the best price or whatever, I just didn't feel like our things, like our interests were aligned, and then I had a problem, like not finding friends in Palo Alto, but it was just like everything was so expensive there. And, when I moved out there to Palo Alto, I didn't realize how much money the government takes from your check when you like for California, and so, I was just kind of getting by with my paycheck. I basically think 60% of my paycheck was going to rent in Palo Alto.
Damn,
and
bro.
That I think that financial strain really put a lot of pressure on me, because up until that point, I had always been kind of like really smart with my money. Like I always saved all, like, my paycheck, I would always put like 40% away or 30% away. And I wasn't saving anything at that point. And I think after a year of not saving any money, it really freaked me out because I was like, holy shit, like my entire paycheck, if not more, is going towards rent. And then I have to pay for gas and I have to pay for all my expenses. And at the end of the day, I'm living paycheck to paycheck and then also not getting like the promotion that I needed or that I really wanted. really just kind of threw me in for a loop. Plus I had just uprooted my entire life. I had lived in Tucson, Arizona for like 7 years at that point. I was missing all my friends. And just a combination of that kind of threw me in for a big spiral, you know? And so I knew that the only way to combat depression, I was severely depressed. I remember crying every day before work, after work.
Is this something that you're sharing with your parents? Or are you trying to be strong for them?
I never shared that with my parents. I think my mom knew I was unhappy because I would come home crying sometimes, you know, and she'd be like, "What's wrong? You know, like, you're home. What's there to cry about? Like, I get to see you. I'm so happy you're here." And it's like, well, okay, Mom, like, I just uprooted my entire life to move back to the Bay Area to be here for the family because my dad was sick, and rent is really expensive. But I can't really, but then when I said that, she was like, "Yeah, but you can live at home," you know, like, she was like, "That's on you," you know, like, "That's on you," you know, but, you know, it was just like, I had been so used to living by myself for so long that I didn't want to live back home, you know, and so it's a combination of all of those things, and so, yeah, like, I think I was just really depressed, you know, for a while when I was out there, and I'm really glad that I kind of had that mindset that, like, look, the only thing that's going to cure depression naturally, because I don't like any, like, even if I'm sick, I don't really like to take like pills or anything. Like, I just want to fight it off naturally. I just knew that the most natural medicine for depression is running and serotonin, like, and being in the woods, you know, like, that's a winning combo. So I kind of just would like drag myself out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. It was a pitch dark, and I remember like not wanting to go out, you know, but I remember always feeling so good after my run in the woods. Like, I felt like a normal human being, you know, afterwards. So it was worth the effort in doing that. So.
How long after you started doing that did you start to feel like, okay, I'm not like depressed anymore?
I think it was actually after I found the mushrooms. So probably like, you know, I always felt after I was done running, I never felt like, ooh, I wish I didn't do that. You know, like, I always felt after, like, you know, like, I always felt after exercising in the woods, like, I always felt so good afterwards.
Yeah.
So even the next morning when it was like 5:30 in the morning and my alarm would go off and I really didn't want to go out there and like go for a run, I knew that the previous day I felt the same way, but after my run, I felt pretty happy enough to like be able to put on a smile and go to work. And a lot of it too was like, you don't want to show up to work like looking like garbage, like you cried all night, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to like compose yourself, and the only way I knew how to do that was running, you know, in the woods. And I'm lucky at that point where it's like, all right, I'm paying a lot of money to be in Palo Alto. There's nothing really out here that's giving me joy that I can afford, because I couldn't really afford to do anything anyways. The only thing was like the woods. And I remember that patch of chanterelles that one morning was just like life changing, because I was like, what the hell is that? It's like this yellow thing. It's huge. What is that? And I remember going over there and picking it up and being like, huh. And I put it in like my shirt, you know, and I like ran back to the car and I was like, all right, I'll deal with this later. I'm going to put this in the fridge. I just thought it was so interesting. Like, the bright yellow really cheered me up, and I just wanted to take it home. And kind of from there, it was like, went to the library after work, realized it was edible, and that was kind of like how the whole thing like really cured my depression. It was like, okay, I'm gonna go out tomorrow, I'm gonna look under that same tree. Like, is there more of these guys? Like, what's happening here? Like, how do I find more? And that constant like treasure hunt. Every time you find something in the woods that's edible, at least, or something that's prized, your brain just kind of like, the serotonin just naturally comes, and you're like, whoa, ding. You know, like, oh, cool, mushroom, like edible. Or even if it's not edible, there's a lot of mushrooms that are not edible but are super cool to look at. You know, that are more rare. You're like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I found this thing, and not many people get to see it. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
At this point, when do you meet Kevin?
I think I met Kevin, so it was after mushroom foraging, which I'm really glad, because I don't think I could have met Kevin being in the depressed state I was in. I was not really dating or anything at that point. I was really focusing on me before I met Kevin. And maybe like 6-7 months afterwards, I was still consistently still going out into the woods and looking for things. And I remember at that point feeling much happier. And I remember I was on a date. I met Kevin on Bumble, actually. So it was online dating.
There you go. Meet someone on Bumble, start a business.
It works. It works. But I remember going on a date with him, and I was showing him all my mushrooms, and he thought it was cool. And I was like, wow, this is the man. Like, this is it. Like, this is cool. Because prior to that, I remember showing people at work, or even going on like dates, with people, and showing people mushrooms on my phone. Like, this girl is like really weird.
Yeah.
Like,
she's not the one.
I specifically remember showing Kevin the mushrooms we went to a tapas place in Palo Alto, and we're sitting at the banquette, and I was going through my phone, like, and look at this, and look at this. And I remember looking at him, and his eyes got really big, and he was like, whoa, what is that? Like, where'd you find that? Is that edible? Like, he was asking all the like questions that I wanted to ask, and so that was amazing, because I was just like, wow, finally somebody that like shares the same interest.
Mm-hmm.
And even at that point, a lot of my friends that I had, we were mostly like going to clubs or bars. It was very kind of I don't want to say superficial friendships, but friendships that are pretty easy to like, like everybody likes to go out and have a good time,
Mm-hmm.
but when you start wanting to talk about mushrooms and really getting into the nitty gritty of it, nobody wants to like carry on that conversation.
Right.
But Kevin was really interested in all the things that I was interested in on the first date. And I was like, wow, this is really special, and he even said like, oh, let's go out in the woods. Like, you want to show me? Like, I would love to like go and see where these things come from.
Yeah.
Because he had never seen or even thought about them. I mean, he had eaten them, he had bought them at the grocery store, but it's not like something that he would have thought like, oh, I can just get this for myself in the woods, right? So that was really special. That was when I was like, wow, like this guy's pretty special.
Dope. Okay. So that sparked a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when did that become sort of serious?
I remember at that point Kevin was actually in the middle of quitting his job, and he wanted to move to India for like a year or so to kind of, he wanted to do a startup with some of his best friends, a tech startup. And he was looking at me, and we're getting kind of serious. And I was like, all right, well, are you seeing anybody? Because I'm not seeing anybody. Like, are we going to, we're going to get more serious here? And he looked at me, he was like, oh, I really want to, but I'm going to India for a year. Like, I don't know how that makes you feel.
Right.
Like, I don't want to pressure you. And I was like, well, I really like you. And so he actually ended up going to India for like it was almost a year, and we were kind of dating long distance.
Right.
So, but it just felt like so special that it was like, all right, I know we just met. Let's just keep this up,
Mm-hmm.
So
the tech startup, did that not?
No, I didn't do well.
Got you.
And so, yeah.
You're like, come back, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really trying part of his life, because he had quit his job and he had gone all in with some of his best friends on an idea that actually had a lot of traction. There was another company that was doing the exact same thing. It was essentially like screen sharing. Mm-hmm. So if you think about like your phone right now, like on Facebook, you can do like watch videos together.
Right.
So that was the same technology that they were working on, but another startup had kind of gotten, I don't know if they got an earlier start, but they had the same idea, but sometimes things just work out, and that co-founder, she had worked really hard on another startup previous that had failed, and then eventually she worked on the same text like screen sharing idea, and she got bought out. So they were kind of like last to the race sort of thing,
right.
And it's all about timing, I think, and sometimes things just don't happen for a reason. But looking back, I think we're both really grateful in a sense for that, because I think he learned a lot from that experience that is now helping shape our experience as a business, such as like, like when he was starting his business, he took out, he friends and family like gave their money to him to help start the business. And that's really tough when then your business doesn't go well, and you lose friends and families like money, and that doesn't feel good. So, for us, for our business, we've not taken any money, right now at all. We're just like, we're going to do this on our own. And if we're going to ask for money, we're either going to do like a community kind of equity funding or some sort of community funding or go to a bank. We're just trying to be like smart about how we do things, financially. Not that they weren't smart, but we just don't want to let people down. I think there's so many lessons he learned that, he's just trying not to repeat. So.
Right. Okay. So, and we'll do his another day.
Yeah.
When he's available.
Yeah.
Crazy. So before he gets back from over there, are you starting your cultures?
Yeah. So when he was in India, I was doing a lot of R&D at home. So I was at that point really hooked on. I was really hooked on foraging. I was really hooked on koji because it was it was like, wow, there's this fungus that's also able to preserve foods. Like that's really cool. So I remember coming home from work and just always R&Ding at home all the time. Like that's all I could think about. And I remember it got to the point where I'm at work and I'm looking at people's ideas, like their projects, like blogs and stuff. And I would like go scroll through like Reddit or, other chefs' blogs and be like, oh, look at this project. And I'll like take down notes like, all right, 10% salt, like this is how long, this is the process. I'm going to go home and do the exact same thing and see, whether or not it works for me.
Yeah.
So I remember I was just not really focusing on work at that point, which felt kind of bad because, I knew that my boss obviously like is paying money to like hire me. Like I'm not really being a great employee at this point. So we just had a really honest conversation, and that's when I decided to leave, sort of thing. Like I planned my exit. But at that point when Kevin was in India, I was just R&Ding a lot at home. And when he came back and he was still working on his startup at that point, I was still kind of on it on my own, but really everything changed when the pandemic hit, and he, at that point, his startup was over and he was looking for a job actually, because we were thinking, okay, like maybe, Kevin can look for a job. I'll do shared culture solo. We probably need a full-time income, so that he can, not that he needs to support me in a sense, but like, let's have somebody work full-time on something and then I can kind of start this up and let's see where we go, sort of thing. But then when the pandemic happened, all the jobs were kind of gone, and we're just like thinking, okay, like, let's just go on in this together. This makes sense. And I think everything that we've done so far, it's just kind of been like the universe has kind of shown us the way, and we just have to have the courage to say yes, sort of thing. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking shared cultures. How'd you come up with the name?
I was in a club and I was dancing, and I love house music, and I used to go to a lot of house music shows either with my friends or by myself, and I just like dance all night long. I love dancing, and I remember one of those nights I had gone with my girlfriend, and she had we gone together, but then she saw a boy that she liked, and she was like, I'm gonna go hang out with him. And I was like, all right, see ya, I don't care, like I'm dancing.
Right.
And I remember just every time I dance, I have so much serotonin in my brain. And I remember standing in the line for the bathroom, and I was thinking, because I had at that point been thinking about my name or the company name for a very long time. And I was thinking, shared cultures, that's it. And I remember writing it down in my notes, and then I was like, I'm going to see if that's a good name tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let me write this down. I'm going to come back to this tomorrow.
You're like, when the Molly wears off. I'm kidding.
But I was just like, I don't know. It's 2 a.m. I've been dancing all night long.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if this is a good name, but it sounds right in my head right now. And I liked all the, the double meanings or the triple meanings of the name. And I was like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to decide. And I remember looking at my phone the next morning and be like, hell yeah, that's a good name, And I was like, all right, that's it. So, it's funny because I think sometimes like just dancing and being in a room full of like high energy people, like just feeling really happy, a lot of ideas sometimes come to me. And I haven't danced in a long time. I think just because
good therapy.
It is good therapy. And I think that, when you're in a space where you're not really talking, because when you go to a dance floor, nobody talks. if you're talking to me at the dance floor, like this is not
Right.
not the time to be talking.
I came to dance.
I came to dance, you know, and it's true. So I would go to these shows and I just dance all night long, and I loved it because I didn't have to talk to people. You just connect with people like through, you know, not spiritually, but yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're vibing, you know, this is cool, and it's like, and I don't ever like. It's so funny because I've never like connected with these people further beyond the dance floor, but at that moment it's like we're all friends and we're all community.
Right,
you know, it feels really special to me, and afterwards I always feel like, wow, I just like worked out, you know. Like you look at your watch or your iPhone and you're like, wow, I danced like 20,000 steps today. Like this is sick. So I remember that was a huge part of like what made me, you know, like prior to Share Cultures, I would go to work, I did the mushroom foraging, and every once in a while I would go dancing with my friends. And those are the three things that was all I did.
Right.
And then now Shared Cultures, it's like, there's no dancing. not that I don't want to, but it's just, I have other priorities right now that are making me just as happy.
Do you play any house music for the Ferments?
No, but when I'm working at the kitchen, I listen to a lot of house music. Actually, one of those times one time we were doing a pop-up during the pandemic in Luttrell, which is one of my favorite house music DJs. He actually lives in San Francisco, and he and his partner Sarah came to my stand, and I was just like wide-eyed, like, oh my God. And I remember telling them, like, I listen to you all the time, because when you're fermenting things, it's so repetitive that you almost kind of like want to be dancing.
Exactly.
You know, like getting into that vibration or that mood. So when I'm fermenting, I'm either listening to house music or I'm listening to a podcast. I'm like either wanting to dance or I'm wanting to learn.
Heard that.
Those are the only two things that I want to do. And I remember like even a while ago looking at the Noma, like there was a Noma project story, and they're like, and I think David Zober had, at that time he was working there, he had posted like a video of all the people, all the fermentation special projects people in the basement, and it was just like loud house music. And I was like, I want to be there, because they're like pounding that sauerkraut or whatever, and like everybody was vibing, and I was like, yeah, like this is the vibe right there. You know, that's my vibe, you know.
So Shared Cultures, badass. You told Kevin, you were like, this is the name, that's it?
Well, I had already come up with Shared Cultures.
Right.
He you know, and so he had known that was the name for a while, and that's what I was going to do. But honestly, you know, in the very infancy of the business, I mean, I did come up with the name. It was my idea in a sense, but there's no way I could have gotten like as far as we have without Kevin. I mean, Kevin's been like day one, you know, like just all the back of house stuff, like, you know, like Excel, for example. Great, like I need that help, you know, and not even that, just like cost of goods. Like when you're fermenting at home or small scale, you're not really thinking about the cost of ingredients. You're just like, oh, morel mushrooms, let me throw that in there, that's delicious, right? Oh, I'm gonna put this in there.
This miso costs $500.
You know, like we made a fava bean miso when we first started, and the fava beans I think were like, I don't remember. I think they were dried fava beans, but I think they're $16 a pound or something. You know, they're really expensive. And I get it, because I've bought in fresh fava beans at the farmer's market, and they're also very expensive. And by the time you shell them, you have nothing.
Get nothing. Yeah.
And so I understand that. But I mean, a lot of the business side of it, I think, you know, Kevin weighs everything to the gram when we're fermenting. And that's really important, because like salt, beans, mushrooms. And so then we know what the cost is per gram, not per pound, not per cup, not by, you know, it's all measured like gram to gram. And a lot of those things, I just, not that I wasn't aware of it, but I just don't know how to manipulate on a spreadsheet as well.
Right.
And he had some experience with that in his previous life. And so, you know, and also he just thinks so logically. Not that I'm not a logical person, but he's a big problem solver. So a lot of the things that we've had to do for our business, such as like building a shoyu press from scratch, right? Like, so when you're fermenting soy sauce, for example, it's basically just a bunch of moldy beans and like grain that you throw into a vat of water, like a brine, and you ferment that for like 8+ months. And it's basically like beanie water. So how do we get beanie water to look like this clear, refined sauce. It gets pressed through layers of cheesecloth. And so initially we're racking it. Post fermentation, we would rack it, but it took so long. And so Kevin was like, all right, we're going to build a press, so it's amazing what he can do, because I almost feel like in a previous life he was a woodworker or something like that, because he just loves to work with wood and loves to build things. And he's been able to build a lot of the things we use for our own business, even down to like the label. We don't have a label machine right now. We hand label everything. So he built like this little bookshelf almost that you can put the jar in, and it's lined up perfectly so that the label can go on.
Oh, nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's all these things that, like, there's no way I could have done this, on my own. And I feel like life always has some sort of, like, it's showing you the way. You just have to have the courage to say yes and to figure it out. But I mean, a lot of these things just kind of happened organically. And it's been amazing, because I've been able to see Kevin kind of flourish in his passions as well. He, like, when he just got, I don't know what tool he just got, but we're not big shoppers. We don't really like shopping, but I remember Black Friday hit and he was like, I'm going to get that table saw, so he's wanting to get a table saw so that he can build out some more things for our business.
There's true passion going on in shared cultures.
It's really cool, to see him build a lot of the things that we use in our day-to-day lives for our business, and even to think about the next step when we get into our space, how we're going to design the warehouse. I know he's going to want to build a lot of it himself, because a lot of these things, they're built to suit, like it's built to however your business needs. You can't just like go to a Home Depot and or some sort of like warehouse and just get a part and just put it in there and it's perfect, right, for your needs. You need to figure out like, okay, in our business, like, what are the things we really need and how can we make that happen? And a lot of that is always custom work that needs to be done. So I think for him, it's an amazing outlet, apart from the fermentation side of the business, that he's able to like engineer things, like picture things and then build it. So it's cool.
Damn.
Yeah.
Fucking incredible people. So let me ask you this. When you guys kind of started hitting your stride, what are the first few restaurants that sort of really championed your product?
So the first restaurant that's ever supported us was actually or the first chef that's ever really supported us was David Yoshimura at Restaurant Nisei. And David was actually Kevin. A lot of people don't know, but Kevin and David used to be roommates. So they go way back to Houston times. And David was really encouraging of everything that I was making at that point. Kevin was not part of that picture yet, but as we started to get going and things were getting more refined, Kevin was in the picture, and David was a huge supporter of us from the beginning. And the first things David ever bought from us was just Shio Koji. And I think I made sake for him once, just for fun, kind of like leaked everywhere. Sorry, David. But it was active sake, like what, and I didn't know. But David Yoshimura, and then afterwards it was Andreas at Snail Bar. So we were selling our ferments during the pandemic at Magnolia Mini Mart, and Andreas would shop there, and he picked up our cashew miso. And when I remember, Andreas just kind of DM'd us, and at that point Snail Bar wasn't really Snail Bar, it was more like a snail wine club. I remember he was doing, and he messaged me, and I remember looking at his account, and all I saw were wine bottles. And I was like, well, okay, like, and he was saying like, hey, I really like your cashew miso, can you meet up, I want to talk to you. And I was like, all right, cool, like this guy looks, there's no pictures of Andreas or anything, it was just wine bottles at that point. And I remember he asked if I would meet him, or if we would meet him at Magnolia Mini Mart, like outside on the tables to just kind of talk. And it was during the pandemic, and I remember I like went in for like a hug, even though I didn't know him, just because that's like out of habit. And he was like, whoa, it's the pandemic. I was like, yeah, you're right, sorry. Like, I'm gonna just sit like,
that's so funny.
I'm gonna sit like,
whoa, it's the pandemic. Fucking.
But I was just so excited to meet somebody that was interested in what we were doing, and that I felt like an embrace was like, wasn't necessary. But I still remember that. And he told me like, hey, I'm going to open up this restaurant. I want to put your cashew miso on the menu. I'm going to be selling sandwiches and stuff.
Still there to this fucking day. I think.
And I remember he invited me to the friends and family like friends and family night. And I was like looking around and I was like, I thought he said he was going to sell sandwiches. Like, this is really like elevated fine dining. And I had no idea. I mean, I didn't know Andreas was a chef. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Nothing. He's just a humble guy, you know, and he told me he was selling sandwiches. And I remember looking at the menu. I was like, there's one ham and cheese sandwich here.
Yeah.
But it's not sandwiches. There are. And I remember looking at Kevin. I was like, Kevin, our kashi miso, it's on the snail dish. This place is called Snail Bar.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember looking at Kevin and our eyes were like, whoa. Like we were both like, holy shit. Like this is cool, you know? And that was kind of, I think Andreas and David were the first two that really kind of championed our products.
Yeah.
And kind of from there, it's all been organic word of mouth. You know, I think a lot of it had to do with Instagram and also I think the Bay Area chef community is pretty small. A lot of people, everybody kind of knows everybody. And what we try to do is, we're trying to create products for chefs because we know, not just for chefs, but for people who want to cook like chefs, and a lot of the things we do, you see on fine dine menus all the time, like koji this, koji that, but it's not really accessible to folks who can't afford a $300 price point menu. But if you see chefs using our ingredients, and then you can try to take that idea and do something of it at home, creating these like flavors, it makes it more accessible to folks who may not, like I certainly can't afford to eat a $300 tasting menu all the time. Like that's something me and Kevin save up for like once a year sort of thing, So it's been really amazing to be able to provide an ingredient that's a little bit more accessible, and also to be able to provide an ingredient to chefs who I'm not saying our products are not accessible to chefs in the sense of like financially, but more so in the fact that like it's hard to make these products consistently at a large scale. And that's something we're hoping to do, especially for the Bay Area community right now. But as we expand, I mean, we have sometimes people reaching out to us saying, hey, we'd like you to work on this project, but we're in like Maryland. And it's like, well, we're only a 2-person team. And as of right now, we're not trying to do special projects for you. Not that we're not excited or not that we don't want to. We do eventually, but we're just so constrained right now with just us two. And we've kind of been very intentional about not hiring anybody because the work kind of comes and goes. So sometimes it's really busy and sometimes the ferments are just hanging out and we're doing computer work. You know what I mean? And so it's not been so consistent. Plus, like our space is so small at this point that if we were to make more product, where would we store it?
Right.
And that's kind of like the labor situation, whereas you're hiring somebody, that means you're creating more product, but we don't have a place to store, and so we're kind of gearing up to that hopefully soon. But it's kind of all slowly but surely. We kind of slow and steady wins the race for us. For
sure.
So
hell yeah. You run in a passionate race.
Yeah.
And you are infecting the Bay Area with love everywhere. Every single restaurant I go to, it's like shared cultures. You guys are everywhere.
Oh, thanks.
So
it's been really cool to see, and we're grateful.
Well, you're part of a wave of culinary arts that is now focused on fermenting.
Yeah.
This started. It's always been, but I think now way more prominent, especially in the Michelin world.
Yeah, totally.
So to be a part of that culture and also changing the game and the types of misos you guys make.
Yeah, totally.
Because those get kind of boring after a while,
Yeah, and I think for us, the biggest thing is, we want to support, we source as many things as possible, like as locally as possible. Because the produce here is insane.
Yeah.
And being able to ferment that, like, wow, I always feel so much joy. And our problem is we almost have too many ideas because there's so much produce and so many wonderful things to ferment here. And it's just us two, and our capacity is just so little that we almost have a problem kind of paring the ideas back and being like, all right, what are we doing this year? What are we, and when we have to plan almost a year and a half in advance for all of our ferments. So we usually take the time. We started doing this last year, or this 2022 in January, where we sat down and we have a ferment calendar that Kevin actually made in Excel, where we're putting down dates like when do we want our shop updates to be? When are the seasons? What vegetable, and then based on that, we're like, all right, based on this, if we want our shop update to be like in April to capture like spring kind of ferments, like, okay, when do we need to start the ferment so that it's ready by spring, sort of thing. So we're planning backwards for like up to a year and a half now of things that we're excited about. So it's cool because it teaches you a lot of patience, of things. And, we also have things kind of going on at home in the second bedroom. We have an R&D shelf where like I have a potato miso right now going, using kettleback potatoes that have been, they've been dry farmed. There are these amazing potatoes. I slow roasted them until they're crispy and then I fermented them. It's been going for about like 6-7 months now. I'm going to pull it next month because I want it to be like a savory potato miso.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, now it's like our minds have even not evolved, but that was an idea 7 months ago. But now we're thinking, ooh, like let's make a curry miso. Can we make like a roasted carrot, roasted potato, type of like, think of comfort meals, but in a miso, like these ideas of flavor and comfort. How do we translate that to a ferment, all while using some of the best produce here in the Bay Area? Those are things that we're getting really excited about, and I feel like our ideas are constantly evolving and changing over time. So,
well, I think everybody can definitely. I feel your passion from here. I'm like, oh my god, and. So thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Fuck yeah. We'll have Kevin on.
For sure.
And this is not the last time. We'll have you on again.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to follow your entire career.
Yeah, thanks.
You take over the world and have your shared cultures everywhere.
We'll see.
You'll have Kim Kardashian at some point being like, shared cultures. You know what I mean?
That would be cool.
Trending, baby.
Maybe.
Maybe not her.
Maybe not her. But
maybe not her.
We got to keep it small and not small, but like, we want it to be. We don't want to be this mass-produced product.
You don't.
That's not. There's no like
no need
soul
for that either.
or heart in that beyond with mass production. In a sense, like we want to keep it like local and special and small batch, but at the same time figure out the steps of being a little bit more sustainable in terms of the workload, because when you're doing something sometimes so small batch, it's all hand manual labor. So it's like, how can we improve on the logistics of the business while still kind of not losing the magic? And that's kind of what we're trying to figure out in order to make our lives a little easier, So we're still figuring it out, but we'll get there.
Well, hearing you say that lets me know that there's probably more businesses that have that same mindset. Because before, I think it's like success is all the money in the world. Yeah. And it's like, I think success is having a passion, applying it, making enough to live happily and influence your culture and your community in a positive way.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah. Cool.
And that's what we're doing, baby.
Yeah,
Suciotalk community.
I love it.
There we go.
I love it.
Peace out, people.
Bye.
Shared Cultures, come get yours. Real quick, where can they find you?
You can find us on our website, www.shared-cultures.com, and on Instagram at Shared Cultures. But you can find our ferments on our website, and we ship wherever USPS takes us. So
awesome,
it's been pretty cool.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
You know what it is? Suciotalk, sponsored by Truffle Shuffle, sponsored by Shared Cultures. They don't know that yet. We'll see you next week. Peace out.
Cool.